The Arts presents Commons, the podcast.
Commons. Hi, Commons is a podcast series about communities. These set of roles that produce the we and therefore the others. So, what is it? Why do we need it? And maybe much more. How can communities give us the same comfort and softness without reproducing its exclusion or suppression mechanism? In other words, how can communities be in line with our non-binary way of living, thinking, and being? In the coming episodes, our four hosts, Faris, Kim, Gabi, and Nanouk, will have a few guests over for dinner. And we do what we do. Talk about the we and the us. So grab something comfy and maybe a glass of your favorite drink and let yourself be amused. In today's episode, we will talk about communal anger.
Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to our podcast, Commons. It's our third edition now, and I am here with my wonderful colleagues. And so in our previous editions, we have talked about calling in and calling out, about the necessity for care, for self-love, but also the necessity for marginalized bodies, for queer bodies, for femme bodies, to also be able to show their vulnerability, their pain. And today we're here to talk about anger. So also the necessity to show anger, hurt, outrage. So we have a very special guest.
Hi.
Welcome.
So nice to have you.
Miyasa, and I would like can you tell us a little bit about you, why you're here, and when was the last time that you felt anger?
All right. I'm Mayasa. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So nice to be here. I'm a rapper, performing artist, anthropologist. And why am I here?
Are you angry?
Wow. Yes, actually, I was thinking about this question. When was the last time I was angry? Actually, today, before I came, as we were reading through the new report of Human Rights Watch in Iraq and how the LGBTIQ communities are treated. And there's this very sad story about a 14-year-old, Muhammad al-Mutayri, that was murdered and filmed. And this made me angry. And I was thinking of, so good that I'm angry about things like this. It's also such a part of being human and so important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing. So I would be also very delighted if the others that are surrounded here with us at this table with the lovely food of Nanouk again.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Hosting is my pleasure.
Also say again your name and when was your last time of being angry?
Hi, my name is Faris. When was my last time angry? Like today as well also. A very personal, uncomfortable reality that I have to face on daily basis. And then it was just manifesting from from the morning. But also I think vividly, the last time I was also super angry was also I think last week when I was supposed to deal with a space that's supposed to hold a very soft space for LGBTI plus Q community, and just me seeing also people who are being hurt and who are being marginalized, inflicting the same pain. And then at the same time, again, also using that marginalizations as a capital to not be held accountable. And I was like really angry about that. Yeah.
Yes, I will go. I'm Gabi, back again.
again.
When was I angry the last time? I don't even know if I can answer that question, because in the current state that we're living, I think like we're perpetually in a state of anger because of everything that's going on around. It's like I can't think of the last time I was not angry. It's just anger nowadays in 2022 is just something that every time you open news or talk to someone, it's just a constant. I feel it's a constant feeling.
It's a constant state of being.
It's a constant state of being nowadays. Exhausting, but yes, it's a constant state of being.
Hey, it's Nanouk. Also back again. My therapist would vouch for me having an issue with anger because I can't show anger, and my hurt translates to other emotions other than anger, and anger would be much healthier for me at times. So there's very rare occasion where I actually feel anger, rage. It usually translates to hopelessness or something. So the last time I really felt angry, I think was in a professional context, where I felt very unfairly treated, and unfairly. Well, let's not use the word abused, but like unfair.
I mean, if you are abused, you should use it.
Well,
it's like, because I think you're going into that same direction.
True. Where I felt pretty abused for the effort I put in and the devotion I put into the things I do, and it wasn't valued enough, and it actually made me go, "Fuck you," which honestly was great, but it's something I don't usually do.
Yeah. So yeah, I think what actually, thank you all for sharing. And I think what I found interesting is that Gabi, for example, said that it's kind of a constant state of being angry. And in comparison, Nanouk, for example, said that they would sometimes have issues with showing it maybe. So my question would be, when would you rather feel it like something fueling, like setting energy free, so you want to do something or change something? And would it rather be just feeling like, some kind of helpless state or,
Well, I think ideally anger should be a catalyst for change. Ideally. But sometimes you don't know how to handle these emotions, and you have to take it, and you feel like you have to take a step back, and you feel hopeless. But ideally, anger should be a catalyst for change.
To experience anger, you have to have a certain set of, I would say, not everybody can afford to be angry. Most people that would be a driving force for change don't have the energy to be angry because they're holding on. And anger is a very energy-consuming thing that a lot of people can't afford.
That is actually very true, because that's why I also as you were talking, I wanted to also say about it's also to a certain degree level to be angry and then express it is a privilege. And then through this very oppressive system that we go through, there are bodies that hold layers and layers of identities that are the anger itself, when they show that anger, is like, it is being used as a tool to be silenced and to be like, put into a box. Oh, you were that. I mean, like, it's like, for instance, like, I mean, like, femme body, for instance, like, especially like black femme bodies, automatically being like, oh, you're the angry one. Okay, I see you.
Yeah.
And then really like, being constantly stopped not to express it. Yeah. So yeah, it really depends on the people and the identity they hold and how they can express it. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of bodies and how they're read, like if I see often how my body is exoticized or orientalized and feminized at the same time, how it's seen or perceived, the anger, it's on one step, it starts the psychologization. How to say it? Psychologization?
Psychologically.
So it's like, oh yeah, she might have some issues, and from this point, there's another step up where the pathologization of anger happens. That she has some severe issues and she's sick. And after this, there's just a little bridge to the criminalization of political anger of certain bodies, because when you have like black and brown bodies, feminized bodies calling for their right and being angry, how fast the criminalization is continuing.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
and how it's read. Like this is one thing that I saw in my previous life, even as in certain teams, when I was expressing my anger over discrimination, and colleagues would say, "Oh, you're so angry. This is so angry," and this becomes then a topic in a supervision. My anger, when I say, "Yes, discrimination makes me angry," and it should remain making me angry. And it's interesting how it's then reversed somehow through powerful positions that, okay, you're the angry one, you're the sick one, you probably have, you cannot control your emotions, so you might get physical or violent. Not seeing that we actually live in a very violent system of oppression.
Yeah, that's true. But also, like, I think it's like, is always is being an anger is always physical. Like, sometimes it's not, right?
I think mainly I feel it like a knot in my chest. For me, it's not physical. It's something inwards that you have to like do something about it, or else it's unmanageable.
For me, it would be also something rather like inside and like holding inside and like, but yeah, that's also interesting because I have thought about also those narratives or also connotations that are connected with anger. So like that anger would always be something destroyable or like destructing and so on. So yeah, I think, but now coming back to this, okay, do we want to have a positive connotation for anger? What do you think? Or is it not a necessity?
Us sitting here at this table, we're in a position of being queer bodies, being femme bodies, being brown or black bodies. We are the oppression has gone so far that we oftentimes live our lives being afraid to be angry because our anger is such a threat. If we would all be collectively angry, we would have the upper hand. We would have the upper hand because actually we're the majority. If we count femme bodies, if we count queer bodies, the cishet white men, they're the minority and they feel it. So us experiencing anger is something that is sort of systematically oppressed.
Yes, anger becomes like also like in the negative connotation sometimes, if anger is used as an expression of marginalized bodies, it is a strategy to pathologize, to psychologize, and to criminalize the body in its action of anger. And this is a colonial strategy, basically, to keep the other as the other that is kind of sick, it is kind of uncontrolled, that needs to be civilized in its emotions.
That's exactly what I mean.
True.
And
Yes.
Anger, to me, I differentiate anger. Sometimes it gets mixed up with hate. Like anger is not hate, or does not necessarily need to be connected to hate. And I think we need to sometimes, in the context we speak about certain things, maybe differentiate between anger, violence, hate, and because they do different things. Because non-violence can be extremely violent and oppressing people. Or this white lie of, and I call it a white cis hetero lie, and saying you have to be non-violent and stand in front of a tank with a flower. Exactly, and this is how
with the potential the tank might probably run you over, but still,
exactly
Still be
like
peaceful.
this, be peaceful.
Yes.
What we see in the discourse of the resistance of Ukrainian people, how acceptable resistance is, showing their anger, their despair, showing that they will arm themselves in order to protect their bodies. But here we have a concept of human that makes the white cis hetero body more human than others.
True.
And
True.
this is where we like come somehow close the cycle of, okay, who's being angry here for what reason, and who has the
I mean, like, for me it's also like, for me it's also, I also like when you were also saying that, also I always like, go back also into our very personal and enclosed manifestations of that, right? Like, how many of us like being in a partnerships where like, we've been treated by silence as like as a punishment, right? And it's really like it's really like it's like it comes from such mechanism, it's like there is hurts and harms and abuse that is happening, and then like and when you voice that, when you also like react to it in an anger, then there is the second part, which is the punishment, like with the punishment of like being silent. You get a silent treatment. And I mean, like, but to come to your question, which is like, do we want to? For me, absolutely yes. Because as especially like, both culturally, religiously, politically, I am a body that is like, raised not to express anger. To be like, so the minute to no matter how kind of pain I'm inflicted with. So me just really repressing all of that and then just rising above it is actually even like, rewarded. Like, oh, you're the bigger person, even though this person comes and like, inflicted so many layers of pain on you. But you still choose to not to express that anger. But now I'm like, really in a space of healing and then me understanding. For me to really arrive into my healings, I really need to tap into my anger. And then from the anger, I would know where the hurt is. And then from the hurts, then I can process the healing, right?
Yes.
So absolutely, yes. Because I mean, like, it's really such a difficult process to do, and as I also do that, I always also again hold myself with a lot of softness and understanding and tenderness and kindness. But like, I am in a process of really like willing to embrace that, willing to unlearn all of these things, as if like, whenever I'm like, whenever harm is inflicted to me suppressing it and then going the other way, I've been rewarded for doing that, for so many time. And, I'm just really absolutely working on that. Like, I'm just, if you're just going to corner me, I'm going to scratch your eyes out. And I am absolutely okay with that.
To be honest, I would love a sort of like, let's say like a support system that in some way, shape or form would reward the anger that I do feel, just in terms of empowering me to actually voice it, because anger is important. And, everybody has their like card of things that anger them in their head, and they're very specific and very easily they're very easily triggered. And I know let's put it like this. I have a lot of anger towards myself because I have not had, I'm not satisfied with the change I've made around me. And I think a lot of it would have been facilitated if I showed my anger and not been the better person, the calmer person, you know. So I do think there could be a positive connotation towards anger. I would like to experience it.
There's something that just, there's this correlation between anger and violence, right? So when is it okay that anger becomes violent, or when is it not okay? I mean, that's a question that I've been, just came into my mind.
Yeah,
like,
sure. Or violence, the differentiation between violence and aggression. If you've been attacked and you are protecting yourself through an aggression that could be read as a violent aggression, these are very philosophical topics to think about. I think with anger, my anger is used as a strategy to pull somebody down, to remain it as a tactic of violence in order to make people down, kneel, so I can feel big. Then anger is highly problematic. But if I express the anger to basically speak truth to power and say, you cannot put us down, then to me, in my connotation of anger, it becomes something self-empowering and positive. I think it's in order to know if maybe this definition is positive, negative, and how we connotate it, I think it's important to always think of power relations and the context we're in. Of course, like if I use my anger to make you feel uncomfortable and timid, and then I can do this perfectly and use my vulnerability and my political strategies, but I'm putting you down with it, then it gets highly problematic in a way, because then I weaponize myself with also like political reasons, like my protest for, I don't know which topic, but I make you feel smaller, less worth of saying something. So I think it's the context and the power relations that are helpful to understand what kind of anger is it.
What would you say? Do you have like any sort of like tip in the sense of like, because it's a paradigm shift, you know, to vocalize, to make the point clear that anger and violence or power structures are separate things, because I think that's what I struggle, for example, with most is I don't want to ever fall into the trap of actually making it about power, because most of my anger is related to power structures, you know, and I don't want to be the oppressor, and it's a very hard balance to find.
But like, you know, but like, is anger aggression? Like, is it very proactively aggressive,
Doesn't
or
feel like that to me.
is it reactive?
Well, I think like there are so many theories on violence, and violence is, or lenses, how to describe violence. You can have a very wide definition of violence where you speak of structural violence, for instance, and then you can have very narrow lenses of violence that speak only about physical and psychological violence. And I think we need to know in which contexts we use certain definition. And aggression is... I think it's a myth that anyone is not aggressive, not violent, or that there's only oppressors and victims, or perpetrators and victims. We all have biographies of both, and it's very contradictory. I think it's more about the contradiction and more about the complexity of our own. And I think, and it's such a lifelong process to think of, okay, where did I abuse my power now? Like just the other day, I was like, I saw this extremely cute kid that I know through a friend, and I just wanted to kiss that kid. So I kissed the kid, and the kid was like, don't do that. And I was like, and then I talked to another colleague who says, yeah, kids, they are touched so many times, they cannot decide when they're touched and not touched. And I started to think about adultism and my privileges and as an adult towards others. So it happens to us the whole time. And I think the process of reflecting it and trying to step by step, drop by drop, to be aware. I think this is one key, but I don't want to give.
For me, it's like, you know, the body, the mechanism that really like oppress and marginalized other bodies, and like, you know, how they use their like the tactic and the tools to inflict violence. For me, like the source is not anger. I'll be like, you're like, what? Why are you angry? Like, you're the one who's inflicting violence and inflicting aggressions and like, all of these kind of things. And I feel like that's not like, that's not the element they have. I mean, when I say they, is the systems that is like, white supremacist, capitalistics, and patriarchic violence. And for me, it's really like, sourced in ego, is sourced in power, is sourced in so many different kind of things. But like for me, anger is not one of it. But like most of the times, anger is like, I feel like belongs to the marginalized body. That's how I feel. Because it's very like, it's something that is actively being provoked. Yeah.
I think I would agree, but then thinking about society and how society perceives anger, then I would go back that it is more allowed, so to say, for actually the privileged body to show anger. But then we are touching again, like I think, what we said before. So, but I'm just wondering now, because we also talked now a little bit about strategies, about maybe political strategies of canalizing anger, for example. And I would ask maybe now you, Gabi, like when you are angry about something, are you then reaching out to other people? For example, when you really have like maybe an opponent, you want to like show that anger or want to change, like are you reaching out to your community then?
Okay, to be 100% honest, no. Anger is something like maybe like Nanouk, that I process it in my body, by myself, in my head, with myself, all alone in my room. Maybe it would be more healthier to share it, to talk with someone else that maybe has shared experiences. But it has to do with this thing about not being allowed to feel angry, about having to like calm yourself down, and not being able to show it, to demonstrate it in any capacity, way or form. Not violent, but do something about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have the feeling that my dealing with anger is still also on this part, rather being alone and holding it in a lot. And also like what I feel often, and I have to admit, like after being angry, that I feel shame, like feeling ashamed because now I, bursted out or was maybe aggressive to someone or was maybe also hurting someone then. But I don't know, do you also have some experience with shame?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's also like, it's super connected also, because this shame goes into also like the strategy of silencing, right? Not for you not to just develop a capacity to express your feeling. Anger is a feeling, is a sensation that is really like, arise when we go through life, and when there is like violence and harms and abuse happens to us. But the way we are also raised, and the way we are always somehow constituted, is like, to just suck all of those and then to remain into your character. Yeah. And then the minute you're like, express that, anger is not part of your character. And then when you do that, the way we make each other not to do it next time is through shame. So it's like, the shame is always, is like, for me, I'm always like also very critical of shame, even to use it onto also the body that hold privilege as well, and that is inflicting. When I say body that hold privilege, there are bodies that hold, like for instance, I as a marginalized body, I hold so many different kinds of privilege. It's very fluid. But when I say bodies that hold privilege in a very violent way, I'm just talking about like different bodies, right? And it is like that is, I mean, like it's these bodies and systems that really like mechanize shame to continue to silence for you not to really express how you feel, which is anger, and then to remain in silence, and then that silence and through the shame, the mechanism of shames guarantees the repetitions of that violence, the repetitions of that oppression, right? The repetitions of that dominance,
Yeah.
over your body, over your wisdoms, over you name it. So I absolutely, and then also like the sad part is also is not only we are like exposed to such kind of violence and such kind of dominance, but like the dangerous part is we learn such dominance, and then as you said, like you would just, we like sometimes catch ourselves repeating the same things that we were like fuck this shit, like like da, 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 and then like I am turning around and doing
Yeah.
same thing.
But I think, like, for example, so I lived this year, no, 2021 or 2020, I think 2021, in Argentina, abortion just got legalized, right? But I lived still in Argentina when these huge rallies, a million people, mostly women, on the streets, asking for abortion to be legalized. Mainly girls, which was really, really amazing, like young girls, teenage girls on the street. And you could see their anger, their collective anger together, asking for something, fighting for something. And I think that is the transformational power of anger. When you connect with someone else on a certain topic, and
Absolutely.
the community is behind you, then I think that's
Yeah.
I think that's the power that anger should have, especially for the marginalized bodies.
But that's exactly what we're actually talking about, communal anger. Because I think thus far we've covered like personal relationship to anger, but what we're trying to get at is the communal aspect of it and the power that holds.
I mean, it goes into the mechanism of that, right? Like, as you said, like, this, like, young, amazing, powerful femme bodies are on the streets and really expressing their angers. Meaning they're like really tapping into the energy of transformations. And,
Yes, into their own power.
Yes, and then really like allowing themselves to really like accept like that hurts, that anger, and sitting with it. And as you sit with it, there are like so many realizations that would come with that. It's such a powerful state of being to be, and then in spite of constantly being told not to express it, not to do it, both from the body that oppresses you and then from the body that also trying to protect you from that oppressive body. Because it's like there is also like the conditioning and the learning and the cohesions that we all learn, and then like if we are silent, if we really somehow put it into what is it, like like timing it, then we can avoid the repetitions of such dominance. So let's just da da da. But in spite of that, people really tapping into that and then expressing it is the quintessential of transformation.
Yes. And I would also say then for me, for example, it's not so much connected with shame, but rather with like feeling energetic and connecting, and when expressing this anger in community in a form of communal anger.
Let's go so far as to say pride. Pride about shared anger.
It is a right.
Yes.
Totally.
Let's not
Initially,
forget pride.
Initially, it was about
Before it was
anger.
pink wash.
Before,
No, I meant pride as like feeling proud.
oh, okay.
I thought you
I
were
was
talking about pride.
like actual
parade.
pride.
Yeah, but also pride. Like I think like the pride of the LGBTQ community is connected to so much dignity.
Yes.
Yes.
And there's also differentiation between dignity and pride, because like in so many like also fascist contexts, they use pride, or pride is getting appropriated or eaten by a capitalist
Yeah, of course.
systems.
Like in
This
the
is what
US,
you
what
say.
are they called? The Proud Boys, right?
I mean straight pride.
Yeah, no. Like talking about this, that in fascist societies, pride is taken as something for the far right. So
Yep.
like it just came to mind, these Proud Boys in the US.
Yeah, I mean, like, the person who started it is a POC person.
See the contradiction that exists.
Yeah.
And coming maybe back to strategies and communal strategies, Miyasa, I'm reframing it. So you are a rapper. How do you use your music as a strategy, also maybe to gather people to music?
It was basically also a strategy to make certain topics that are connected to anti-colonial discourses or queer feminist discourses also somehow accessible for people that don't have access to academia. This was I started one of my first rap songs. Basically, it was about rage and anger. I was inspired a lot of texts, like from Frantz Fanon to Judith Butler, and I was like, this is so unfair. I can read all this and I have access to it, but I'd like to express it in a different way and just go away from that also violent language that excludes people. So and there was in language there is exclusion. Let's be honest, no matter how hard we try. Even in the vocabulary that we use that are so known to us, it's still something very hard to grasp for many other people. So it was basically the lines were like, make sure you feel anger, make sure you feel rage, make sure you say human, make sure for today, for tomorrow, forever, make sure there comes rage. And this was basically like, it came after the murder of George Floyd, and the analogy of breathing, where Frantz Fanon said, it's not about culture, we simply can't breathe. Talking about the wretched of the earth, that they can't breathe, and the system of oppression, and that they were revolt in communal anger, basically. We can translate it probably also into this direction. So it was basically a way of also trying to have spaces, and braver spaces to say things that are tabooed also in society, like speaking about violence, for instance. But if you look at the civil rights movement, if there was not the arming of people against police brutality, like we can think of it, or how were people freed from the concentration camps, like it was not a kumbaya circle and we like... You feel me? Like it is.
Are the world.
So this is also like it's a taboo, basically, to speak about resistance that is connected to anger, and also resistance, a violent resistance, or violent like aggression. Call it like it depends on the way you look at it. At the end of the day, and I don't know. Like I felt on one hand, very privileged to have the language and the skills, and also the topics to work on it. On the other hand. It gets still swallowed by capitalist systems. Like when it's still about, selling doing projects, blah, 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 where like I'm also in this contradiction.
How much reach do you
Like,
have?
exactly. How many shows, quote unquote, were sold out. And this is this ambivalence like we all are in because we're all in the system and agents in the system.
Yeah, but I think we have to really, like, as a marginalized body, we have to be willing to stay in that gray space, to constantly really criticize that. But at the same time, also because, our anti-capitalistic work is not about us not acquiring money. Right? It's more about the exploitations of bodies. So like, in your work that really like, try to express anger and really like, secure the dignity of human beings, like, you are not exploiting anyone in any shape or form.
Well, yeah, still it depends on the way and the developments, of course, as well, like, and on where it is going. But the anger in to be able to express the anger in the rap text, it was kind of a relief to me, like also like to have the possibility to do that, like especially because in all this anger lived on a daily life, when is the time where we also talk about how we live our relationships, talk about love and caring for each other? It gets like a hard thing to do, like for me, speaking for myself. But my anger is also, and this is what, when I thought about the question, is so much connected to love. I like the love, or let's say like I get angry if I see injustice happening to people that I really love also so much. So this anger and this expression about how people get treated on the borders, how these border regimes are murdering, like this anger, it comes for a love, like, and a wish for dignity as well. Like, so it's also connected to this. So this is of course, it's exhausting sometimes being angry all the time. And I get this question a lot, like this, why are you so angry thing is like a part of my life.
Why are you chill?
Why are you so angry? I was like, how come you not angry? Like when it's so easy for Black and brown and queer bodies to bleed, to drown in the seas, profiled by police, whatever. And no mourning, no space for mourning. Like it was like also a part why I got inspired for the rapping. It was basically the invasion of Iraq in 2003. It was so easy for 1 million Iraqis to fucking die. Yeah. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. And it's connected to so many layers of our personality, I think, anger. And context related, I don't know. I'd always try to not make things so simple for me, for myself as well. But as you can feel now, the energy in the room, I feel connected to you. I feel like I want to mourn, I want to cry somehow. At the same time, I feel empowered sitting here and sharing this. You know? And it's not only about Iraq. Let's just look at the world the way it is at the moment. How fucking come you're not angry? It's so fucking easy for us to die.
And then also like, not only just die, but also like, that death not being recognized, right? Like, I mean, like dying is one thing, but dying in silence, oh my God, it's really like a whole nother level of violence, You would just like, be eradicated from this world as if you never existed. And no one even like, cared enough to just like, pinpoint it and saying like, oh, let's stop. These things is happening and we're losing this amount of people. And then these bodies had values and no longer is like, they're no longer here. They're vanished. And then there is no such recognition. There is no such knowledge being created. And it's like, for me, it's so violent. Like it's another layer like of violence other than like, taking the bodies physically away from this realm. But also like, inflicting a whole nother level of violence, not for the bodies not to be remembered, not to be in the memory of the body that remained behind.
Yes, connecting it also to the question of like Judith Butler when she said that it's easy for brown bodies to bleed, and there's the denial of humanity because there's no space for mourning to remember. Yes. And this was also like a moment for me to like basically not give the audience this classical struggle porn where it's all about sitting in the audience and feeling better because someone somewhere else is struggling, but mainly turning a mirror and saying, baby blue, you part of this system. And I'm down, or other people are down because you are high. And if I have 1 hour performance, I make you feel what it feels like. Even if it's 1 fucking hour of your life. And you're like, some people were upset. One person left the performance. It was very interesting for me to see. I also actually expected much more people to leave because they couldn't bear the anger. Anger is so hard to bear.
Yes.
It's so hard to bear. It's so a lawine.
And then also, like, who has the privilege to step away from the anger?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who has the privilege to leave and get out of it? And who can't? And
who is forced to sit with it?
Who can intellectualize their anger enough? Because there's people that can't intellectualize their anger, and they sit with it. We're fine in most of the most of the times, and that's really fucked up.
And whose anger, like, if it comes, let's maybe speak about violence also, like whose violence is also more seen and problematized, or what sort of violence is more problematized in society when, like, if you think of certain ways, often also marginalized men from the working class, quote unquote, that are the problem, but you don't primarily think of politicians that make so violent decisions and put us in despair and put us in violence again. You know, it's also like this looking down, like even if we speak about toxic masculinity.
I mean, like, you know,
it makes me angry.
I mean, like, you know, we are seeing it, right? Like, you know, like at the moment, like, you know, with the war in Ukraine, how the world is perceiving it and really, like, you know, being in shock, while there is another 24 active war that are, like, you know, millions and millions and millions of people are being killed and displaced and blah, 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 blah. I mean, Yemen was under siege for almost 5 years now. Nobody give a fuck about that lives, right? And then, but also, and then even like, because it's also like, you know, it goes into this necropolitics of, like, you know, the politics of death, the politics of life, right? Whose death is, like, you know, is important, whose death is seen as a loss, whose death is seen as a liability, whose life is seen as a liability and a loss, you know? So yeah, that's true.
Yes, it brings it up, and it brings out, like, even, how can I put it the right way, or like in a sensitive way, is like this, what it does is a certain Opferkonkurrenz, like what is Konkurrenz in English? Oh, competition, yeah? Like a competition of victims. What happens is this desolidarization with other people that flee war, death and murder, with this claiming certain humanity for certain people that flee, as if, and this I find, like, it reminds me a bit of this all lives matter kind of discourse, like where basically the struggle of Black people is again, like, pushed away from the center of the debate, and it was made all of a sudden, oh yeah, all, and it shifts to a white supremacist narrative. And I feel the same about, like, certain topics, especially like in all solidarity with every human being that is fleeing Ukraine, with every human being trapped inside of Ukraine, with every human being locked in a prison in Ukraine. It's not like, this is the tricky part, but to see how things are discussed in a very nationalistic and pro-Western way, forgetting about the fact what happens in Yemen, in Somalia, in so many other places of the world.
I mean, Ethiopia
at the moment, like,
you know,
What's happening in Ethiopia at the moment is
it's
mind-boggling.
It's mind. It's beyond.
It is beyond.
Zimbabwe is beyond. Even Nigeria, it's really yeah.
Yes, and again, this is also what makes me angry, and it's been translated in the wrong way. I was like, oh, what, you don't have solidarity? Of course there's solidarity. You ask somebody with Syrian descent and Iraqi descent. I mean, Aleppo and Eastern Ghouta was bombed by Russian drones, and it was so also hard to watch the silence that was so violent upon this. Or even if you take the case of Chechnya, which I think it was one of the least broadcasted war, because it was just a bunch of journalists that could have broadcasted the atrocities of war inside of Chechnya, and what happened there, and the traumas, and basically also not being remembered, not having a space for mourning, and this is also part.
I mean, literally people saying, we have never seen a war in Europe like this. And then, people in Bosnia and...
What about Srebrenica?
They will be like, what do you mean?
Yes, and it always goes back, and this is why I value the work of Sylvia Wynter so much when she speaks about that there are genres of being human. And so there's the ideal human that is cis, that is white, that is hetero, that is male, that is, so to say, overrepresented in its being better human than others. Like if we look at the COVID topic, we used to see pictures from people from the global south, suffocating, dying, they can't breathe, but we didn't see the white man. Not that I want to see this, no, but it really shows on how also his dignity was kind of saved in this very vulnerable moment. But it's so easy to show Black and brown bodies dying and suffering, and there's also in this, it's located in this representation of the better human that we see on a daily life.
Yeah,
and I mean, we experience them differently, of course.
That's true. Even in that, in this war narrative is also, because it's you would just see cis white men being represented as being represented as the protector in the war. They're look at this 18 years old boys going to the war. They're just learn it for a week and they're here to protect. And then there is, you just even in that constellations of whiteness, then you would just see femme bodies and children's and everything's being we're the poor. There is these things, and it's so amazing how even these constellations is really taking away the humanity out of these bodies, right? There are, I'm sure, through this war, there are so many young cis white male being killed and brutalized, but that is not being allowed to be shown because it doesn't really represent the aesthetic. It should upheld the white supremacist, patriarchic, capitalistic image. So always, even if you are in that in that criteria, aesthetic wise, even if you are fitting into your action, the minute that you are not representing this power, you are discarded. And your pain is not going to be seen because it's not going to maintain that power. Yeah. The same way, and so many amazing femme bodies at the moment is also defending. So, but no, it needs to just sell the image of this, who need the protections and all of these things and maintain that power.
But again, that's another thing where the narrative of anger, for example, we're seeing, if we're talking about the Ukraine war, we see people defecting, right? And we get a glamorized story about giving up, about being soft in some sort of capacity. And we get a glamorized view of that. Oh, this person was strong enough to say no. But we don't see that it might be attached to anger, saying, I don't get why this is happening. Why are we doing this? Why are we killing people? There is anger attached to it, but what we get is a glamorized view that says, oh, kindness rules, you know? It is a story of narration.
Yes, and also this the usage of the term freedom and the peace flags. Like, I'm not against peace flags. I'm not against peace. I just find it very surprising that everyone finally found a war that they don't
Can
agree
agree on.
with. You know, like as if it is like in a way that it's like so identitarian and Western that I'm like, hold on, what about like international solidarity? Like,
What's white enough?
yeah, what's
This is white enough, apparently.
That's also like the definitions of like succeed or fail. War is a hell. Yao is a hell. You know?
yes, and still then seeing these pictures of the demolished homes of Ukrainians and seeing all these empty buildings is so painful. And it like, again, with all solidarities from Ukraine to Gaza to any place of the world that is living under like that have to flee or can't flee war. I think it's important to point this out again and again. It's a lot of BIPOC people and queer people doing this job to gain back the space for or to redefine what humanity is. That we can. There is not like a better victim of war. And again, it's like something that inflicts anger, it's something that consumes, it's something like I catch myself writing emails, writing messages, trying to find a position that is not harming anyone, that try like to open the space to have, to talk about it, how we deal with certain challenges in a capitalist system. Yes, and where is the time for love?
Stay tuned.
Yeah. State.
Or maybe this is also a way of showing love and for the idea of this earth.
I mean,
being a
you said
better
it also
place.
like, earlier, like, it's really like, connected, right? Like anger is connected to love as well. Like, you express anger because you love, because you care, because you believe it's matter, right?
Oh, there is a matter, of course.
I think ideally anger should come from love, but it can also come from hate. And
It can just stem from basic necessity of like surviving.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like, for me also, like, how I understand hate is also like, for me, it's a misplaced love, because oftentimes I don't see hate as an opposite of love. For me, it's not. Hate is a misplaced love because also like, I like even like, in my personal life, I also wrote a poem about it where I just like, try to really like, understand and really like, create a capacity of like, where like, where my parents, where my family cannot really like understand me as a queer body, as a feminine binary body. Like, where I like it, I like, it's so amazing. I know they love me. I know they love me, but like, they don't have the capacity to like, to really embrace me. And then I was really like, for years and years, like trying to understand, like, what is this source? Like, how is this love can just be like, not really sit well with me because I remember like, my sister, like, calling me, crying her heart out and like saying like, how much she loves me, but at the same times also like completely disregarding and disrespecting my whole entire existence. And then I was like, how is this possible to do that? And then like, the understanding of like, actually, you know what? Like hate is not the opposite of love. Actually, like, I am receiving her loves, like, my parents and my siblings' love for the God, for the Jesus, for the Almighty. They've got the devotions and, all the things they really, pour into that love. It's just coming into me as a hate. It's really it's a misplaced, for me, hate is a misplaced love. It's a miseducated love. It's a misunderstood love. It's a guided love. For me, actually, the opposite of love is fear. It's which creates really misunderstanding, which creates miseducations, and really governs people into a different ways of violence, saying in the name of in the name of Jesus Christ, I would have a machete and cut your your neck, your neck away. And that is really pumped in love, but it's for Jesus. So it's it's really
But I think that's the absence of love.
it is the presence of love for a different body, and really governed into to really just maintain that loves. So anything and everything that really comes in the way of that loves, then it would be destroyed.
I have similar experiences, but where this fear is a strategy to keep the order as a way of control. And of course, from the aggressor, be it the closest relative of mine, it is not seen and grasped as violent. And this is how violence works so many times. You don't grasp it as violence because it's so normalized. It's very normalized. So you invited me into a journey of my own experiences with very close people, and this is why it's so interesting to see on how many levels it works. I think when speaking of fear itself is a strategy for power and control somehow. It is something, because they're believers in a certain dominant order.
Yep.
And if you are not obeying that order, there are certain strategies to keep you in there.
Yeah.
And then the motive can be love.
It is love.
I don't know if it's for me, if it's love. I have this is very personal, but it's okay to speak about it now.
Of course.
This division of personal and professional, as if it was ever possible. It is that it was always punishment was so many times argumented with love. And love is so abstract. Even when I used it so many times, I was like, okay, but what love of definition are you talking about? But it gets more complicated. And I think this is also something I take with me as a learning goal, maybe to define this more for myself, what it means. What it means if closest related people to me think they're providing me with love, but they're actually filling me up with expectations or filling me up with their own anger that I don't function the way they want me to function because I went through, or I'm very heteropassing, so it's very hard for people to believe that I'm not hetero. So it's in my case or my family, for instance, it was always oh, it's not so hard to heal you. Mm-hmm. We will manage. You can be healed. This is only a trend. You are misled, misguided. So, and it is so harsh, so violent to me, although I know it comes from a thought or a wish or a desire to see me safe. Somehow I feel like, mommy, unconsciously, you know how brutal and fucked up this world is. Mm-hmm. And it reflects in this desire for me to not be what I am in order to stay safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that knowledge is also really what is it? that knowledge really is developed a technology from a lived experience. You know, it's because she is saying that because she did it to herself, and she knows if I do it, I know you can do it. I have the lived experience, the capacity to really like reforms and mold myself to this way of living, and I am living. And you still can do it. It comes from that space as well.
Yeah, somehow, yes. And somehow it's also a try to protect, like, of course, to protect me from this outside world. But in this strategy of protecting me, at the same time, the one that perpetrate the violence, they remain in impunity.
Yeah.
It is also at the same time switching perpetrator and victim. It is like this, oh, you can't dress like this because I'm so scared that somebody will touch you or rape you or whatever. And it's always like this fear, raised with this fear, of course, out of a space of love, that you please be safe, know how to dress, know how to talk. Don't be so embracing and outgoing and trustful to strangers, the stranger analogy. But it's never or hardly like... talking about what are the strategies of strangers in order to groom, to teach this to, in my case, a teen girl.
Yeah.
It is always about me being a failure, me doing something wrong, me having like missed out, me not understanding the world because she loves me and she wants to protect me. But, you know, now like not being a teen anymore, I feel like, okay, maybe there are different strategies to work on it. And yeah, and it's ambivalent, and it is, there can be love and fear, and sometimes also hate at the same time. Like, it's very hard sometimes for me to bear the homophobic stances because they're so normalized, not only in my family, but in society. In life. So there's bearing this all of the time, like... I love when you start and say it's so hard not to be angry, but sometimes it's like I start to detach with my own body and not feel the anger anymore because I'm forced to not feel my body.
You become numb.
You're not here.
You become numb.
Yeah.
Anger can also trigger this numbness. I don't know if this word exists.
Yeah, and because it's like, you know, it's one way of mechanism, right? Like, you know, I am not me. This is not me. I'm not here. Whatever is like, you know, happening to this body. It's not me. I'm somewhere.
But I'm sorry. No. What's something that? But you just said about this thing that's put into this context of parents being overprotective, them telling their LGBTQI plus son, daughter, person to tell them to not be that way, or to tell the daughter to not wear the short skirt, or to tell the son that wants to paint their nails to not paint their nails, because they're in some way trying to protect them from the world that say that. But instead, that other body should tell them, well, why don't you get angry that this happens? Like, why don't you get angry that if I wear a short skirt, being a woman down the street, and I do maybe face danger because of that, then you should get angry about that, but you're getting angry for the wrong reasons. You shouldn't get angry for me wearing the skirt. You should get angry for the man's
who's doing that.
Who's doing that, and do something about it.
That's right. And the impunity stays there. It starts there, I think, by already in very simple daily life things. It's always the switch of perpetrator and victim. Somehow, in this certain case of, oh, what did you wear when this guy did this and this? And I once did a little experiment with my very reflected, cool, anti-racist, anti-sexist friends, where I said, okay, I'll make a walk from my home to another district, and I count the looks and the harassment. And then I wrote them in within half an hour, this and this and this and this happened. And a colleague wrote, but what did you wear? Oh. But it was okay. Hold on. I sent the picture, and the answer somehow was, I can't remember because it's a couple of years ago. The answer was like, what the fuck, no matter what the fuck you wear, what was this? But it's so, it just showed how deep it goes.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
And she automatically corrected herself because it happens. And then she says, what? That knee-long fish... Like I was wearing like a white T-shirt and like not what you think that I was wearing with all the exoticisms and no, but like just to see in what it is about, because it's about dominance, it is about power, it is about feeling so much higher as this young or not young girl that wears a skirt or certainly.
I mean, like into what you were saying also, in 2019, there's this a collective back home in Ethiopia. It's called Setawit, meaning feminize, and it's a collective of feminist groups, and they did an exhibitions of trigger warning, and where all this body at that time of their rape. So it was like a case of 25 cases to submit what they were wearing. And you would be like shocked. It was hijab. It was all of this covered up things and all of this kind of things. And it's the idea of also oftentimes actually when you are in your power, when you're saying I wear what I wear, this is my body and I'm in control of that, and I'm really on the street and you're not going to do anything about it. And when you have that energy, there is a level of violence, but to the point also intimidations and being pushed away. And I remember also another case where I in my old office where one of my colleagues really got killed and being raped and all this kind of things. And then she's very very timid and really covered up and all of this kind of things. And it's really really doesn't really matter what you're wearing, and it's violence is violence, and it's gonna be coming and it's gonna manifest, which goes into also again the mechanism of shame, the mechanism of silencing this body not to express the anger. Yeah. And because when you express the anger, you're developing a mechanisms to really reach into the pain. When you reach to the pain, then you are in a journey to your healings. If you heal, you are literally a weapon of destruction for this system. Right? So it's always with layers and layers and layers of things is about distracting you from that journey.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm just now reflecting on everything you said. I also going into the pain and into the healing. My first question, also for coming maybe to an end, would be when do you feel that all of this work that we have to do to transform and all of this process of showing anger, when is it too exhausting for you? And the second question would be, what do you wish for the future? How to also, call in more people in this showing a communal anger. Yeah, maybe Nanouk, do you want to start?
I'm going to do a very quick example of something. One of the most violent things that has been inflicted on my body, right? Just in terms of memory, there's been more violent things happening in my life, but something that stuck with me is I was in boarding school with boys, right? And after sports, you shower, right? That was something that I could not perform. That is something that would have ruined me. But yet, my sports teacher at one point dragged me into the shower, ripped off my clothes, set me under the shower, and turned it on. And I was on the floor crying. And the boys around me were laughing. this is sexual violence inflicted upon me, right?
Yeah.
And this is sexual violence inflicted upon a non-cishet person, you know? And this is something that I just spoke out the example and it touched all of you. This is something I can communicate. It's very easy, it's very simple. And that's a rallying point. It's like, accept the inherent value of a body and accept the inherent value of a bodily autonomy. Yeah, that was my very quick example.
Can you repeat the question?
I mean, like for me, it was like one question, like for me would be like, is there a certain point where you just are tired and like want also to maybe rest and like heal also and maybe not always be in this fighting process? And the other one was like, yeah, what do you wish for like your communities also for the future? Yeah, how do you want to go ahead with this communal anger?
I mean, like for me, the tiring aspect of the anger is like, you know, it's the ping pong, the back and forth of like, you know, like this violence that is being inflicted, and then like, you know, it's arising sensations, and then like, you know, I'm like, you know, going to it, and then still also feeling, still facing a resistance for me not to express that violence from the same space that really, I mean, for me not to express that anger from the space that really caused the violence, then like, you know, this ping pong is the tiring aspect of it. And then I am really like, you know, trying to develop a knowledge and a learning process for me, how I can sit with this anger and then really like, you know, as I sit with it, like, you know, how can I express it in a way that can lead me to where the hurt is. And it is really like such a at the same time, again, such a consuming process that I am going through. I'm actually like reading. Actually like, you know, thank God. I mean, like I bought the book and I've been like, you know, sitting on it like, you know, for almost a year, and it is like it's titled "Love and Rage: The Path of Liberations Through Anger" by Lama Rod Owens. It's really like, you know, actually like I got the books a year ago, but I also knew about the books to be published from, because I follow the person on Instagram, and they, like, you know, they were really like, before the book was published, they were really like, you know, giving a teaching of each sections of the books, and really like, you know, such a practical tool. I mean, like it's giving me like so many practical tools to really understand how, you know, I can use anger for my, like, you know, for my road to liberation, meaning freedom, right? And one of the things, for instance, I understand through this was about how body that represent that such dominance really use kindness to silence my anger. You know, it's like I've experienced it when I was in Salzburg. There were like two white couples, queer couples that really like Austrian, that were really instrumental for, you know, creating safer space for me here. And then, but like as I also like, you know, navigate this space, even I not just like, you know, not just the general public, but the queer space. And it was so violent, it was so racist, it was so degrading and dehumanizing. And then when I was voicing all of that and really trying to also really find my way of like, you know, to really sit in my truths, I've seen these bodies using their kindness towards me as a way of silencing me, not to really speak about these issues, and really managing my anger. And I was like, oh my god, like I remember being absolutely being silenced by it. And then but after I the person was on Instagram literally reading about this, bodies using kindness to silence people. And I was like,
There we go. There we go.
oh my god. So it's really about understanding all of this, really in nitpicking, and really knowing the mechanism of the mechanism that is silencing me, silencing my anger, silencing and telling me to be in silence, not to express my anger. And it's an ongoing process. It is as exhausting as it is, but at the same time also with this knowledge it's very rewarding, because I know I am in the road of locating my pain, locating my hurts, and going to my healing journey. It's a very long process. And then my wish for the future is the same, to the same for all of us, both in a communal way, both as an individual way, because also at the same times, if we do not experience and really develop a knowledge and a capacity within the individualness, we will never know about collectiveness, because I always share what I know, what I'm filled with. And if I'm filled with hurts and hates and all of this kind of things, that's what I would share it with anybody, especially to the bodies that are close to my vicinity. And so my wish and my desire and want for the future is for us to really look inward and really develop this capacity that really unlearn and deterred from the cohesives and the conditioning behaviors of this dominance, and develop that understanding, and then move forward to share it to the communal way, and arrive to a space of healing.
So, numbness correlated to anger. I remember the last time I felt numb, that I just had to disconnect and not think about it, was when in Latin America, when the Venezuelan refugee crisis started happening, and just Venezuelans fleeing their country and going to Colombia and Ecuador and Peru and Bolivia, all the way down to Argentina. But the level of zero solidarity from countries in Colombia and Ecuador, and seeing these bodies as others, just because they were mainly brown bodies fleeing an economic situation and a violent situation in their country. With that topic, I've also been thinking about this whole thing of Ukraine, Europe, that because they're white, they're received when brown refugees, POC refugees come to Europe, they are literally met with dogs and barbed wire. And this thing is that Europeans can see themselves in the Ukrainians, but that's not something that happens in Latin America. No other Latin American country sees themselves in the other country. They see the other Latin American as the other. And I just remember when that was happening, my mom was going crazy on the family group chat. And I couldn't take it anymore. And there were many times when I just had to leave that group chat, stop looking at Instagram, stop looking at the news, because I just couldn't do anything about it. And yeah, that's when numbness kicks in. That's when you just feel so much anger. That's when the numbness kicks in. And as for the second question, this is what I just talked at the beginning, hoping anger could be a catalyzing force for change in the community. That's for people coming together, seeing a problem, and doing something about it. We've seen it with people were angry that LGBTQ didn't have marriage rights, went to the streets, asked for it, not asked for it, screamed for it. HIV medication, refugee situations. So if your anger is collectively channeled, it can be a catalyst for change. So that's my hope for the future.
Yeah.
So many wonderful things said already. I don't know what I can add to this, but maybe in connection to what you said, I think getting to know a practice of solidarity that invites as many different people as possible to, and open spaces for, and I like to call them brave spaces because I don't believe in the concept of a safe space in such a violent society.
You are in the right place.
We're calling it soft space at the moment.
Soft spaces or brave spaces or soft brave spaces where there can be this exchange of experiential knowledge, because this is what many times where I felt numb, it really helped me to find ways back to my own power. It is when I knew like a person that that just told me like, this was one thing, like after threats I was receiving, and I was so shamed again to either show my anger or express my despair or my vulnerability. And she said to me, there lies such a strength in vulnerability. Yeah. And this shared, I think, knowledge experience really, that got stuck in my head somehow. And it also inspired me to, and gave me energy to continue. And there, like, when you were talking, I had this 4 lines in my head that I wrote once, also in previous rap songs, where it's like, our power you never take, and our bodies you never break, on our lands you never stand, and our money you will never spend. No?
Woo woo!
And like, and these lines also came out of like talks to community members, shared lived realities, as also we did partly today. I think this is very helpful. And otherwise, I think it's very individual what helps. But I think it needs anger. I think it's a very crucial emotion we need in order to make those powerful understand that they cannot treat minorized people the way they treat minorized people. Or
No, I just wanted to just say also, like, you know, as you said, like, you know, like there is the power in the vulnerability, and also, like, you know, there's the idea of also like the brave space and the soft space, because it's in the world that really, like, in a system that really required us to just, like, you know, be this not angry, because like with brave is like, you know, expressing that anger is also the bravest space. At the same time, also like in the soft space, also in this world that want us, like, you know, and really like romanticize our perseverance, our strength of, like, you know, facing these systems, for us to consciously say, like, you know, no, we are soft. Actually, we're really, like, you know, soft, and embracing that is the most brave things that we can do. I just wanted to say that.
Hey, so thank you all very, very much. I think it was a really lovely evening, and or actually afternoon. And yeah, like many thoughts that also go on ahead in my head. And thinking about also for me to really share and share and share vulnerability again, and anger, and also to not come to this thinking of rationalizing everything, but sometimes also go with the emotion. That's what I take out of this. And
Thank you so much, Miasa, for being here.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
being here.
inviting
And
me.
Thank you for dropping the mic. Oh God.
Amazing. No, thank you for having me. Oh my God. I feel humbled. Thank you.
Yeah, we were very happy to have you.
Yes.
Yeah.
See you next time.
See you next time.
See you next time. Come on.